Dober večer in lepo pozdravljeni, dragi gostje, filmski ustvarjalci in filmski prijatelji. Dobrodošli v mestnem kinu Kinodvor, kjer je danes poseben dan. Gostimo namreč premiero filma Matura, ki prihaja seveda od romunskega režiserja Kristjana Mungiuja. Poseben dan tudi zato, ker je bilo planirano, da je danes z nami režiser, avtor, ki ga mnogi že kar nekaj let spremljamo in smo se ga resnično iz srca in iskreno zelo veselili kot enega naših najbolj dragocenih gostov, vendar pa nas je tokrat presenetila višja sila. Do nekje 7. ure zjutraj so avioni iz Bukarešte še leteli, potem pa ni več. In eden tistih, ki so bili odpovedani, bi moral biti tudi Kristjan. Tako da Kristjan je na varnem, na suhem, bi tako rekli. Z njim smo imeli danes že pogovor, tudi po Skypu, tako da nam je pokazal skozi okno, koliko snega je zunaj. Imel je, bom rekla, kar veliko tremo, če tako rečem, zaradi tega, ker smo mu povedali, kakšen odziv smo dobili od ljudi, ki so ga pričakovali. Jaz moram povedati tudi to, da smo tokrat kontaktirali kar nekaj slovenskih filmskih ustvarjalcev, režiserjev in jih povabili, da bi se z Kristjanom srečali, da bi ga spoznali in se vam, ker nekateri ste tudi z nami tukaj v dvorani, za vaš pozitiven odziv iskreno zahvaljujemo. To je ena od tistih gest, ki jih bomo skušali v prihodnje narediti še večkrat, seveda ob vsaki priliki, ko nas kakšen avtor oziroma filmski ustvarjalec iz tujine obišče, ampak lahko se zgodi tudi kaj nepredvidenega, še posebej ob januarskih oziroma zimskih premierah.
Kristjan, welcome.
Hello.
You see us?
Yes, I do.
Yes. So before we will ask the audience and give the opportunity to ask questions, I would just like to thank you once again for being with us. I mean, we really hoped another type of being with us. As you know, in the spring of 2013, we had Christina and Cosmina with us, and we were so happy when in November this year you confirmed that you would be with us tonight, but then the weather gods had a different opinion.
Well, I have to apologize again for not being with you tonight, and I promise I will be there next time. Thank you very much for staying at this time to talk to me.
Okay, so when do you come?
Well, I have to write first of all, but for the next one I will be there for sure. Thank you for the invitation.
Okay, any questions? Not yet. We have a lot of Slovene filmmakers also with us, so I guess they will come up. They're a little bit shy, so
I understand perfectly. It's very difficult for me to speak after somebody else's film right away.
Okay, maybe if before, I mean, as a warm up, maybe let's talk about the scripts, because you're not only really a brilliant filmmaker and director. All of the feature films you made, also the Omnibus, which we all showed in Kinodvor also, and also all the shorts that you made before that and in between that, you also always wrote the script. Can you tell us something about this? So how do you pick your stories? Tell us something about your writing process.
Well, actually I think this is the most difficult thing for me and the most creative part of this process, in the sense that I feel that I need to have the right story and the right interest to do a film. So I take a very long while before I decide to do something else. Sometimes it lasts for, I don't know, months. Sometimes it lasts for years to find something of interest. And it's not the writing which is complicated, it's finding and understanding what is subject matter for cinema. Actually, this is the most complicated thing for a filmmaker. What of all the things happening next to us is subject matter for cinema for you? Once I decide this, and it has to be something which is at the same time personal and universal enough, and with a specific rhythm, and with some things that interest me. And honestly, it has to be something that I feel it's important for me in that moment. And I think that all the films that I did are somehow connected with the age that I was having when I did them. So it's not by accident that I did this film about education now, and that because my children are at this age when I'm having a lot of questions. And it wasn't an accident that I did 4 months, 3 weeks, and 2 days after I became a parent, and I was revisiting a lot of decisions from my early ages. Once I know what I'm going to write about, it's not such a complicated process. I do like a diary. I'm writing like a diary of every other day from the day of these people. I won't be using all the events, but I need to know what happens in each other moment. And there are a few decisions which are important, and you need to know this at the beginning, but I'm sure that all the filmmakers in the audience know this. You need to know what is the length of the film, in the sense of how many days are you putting together. I am working now with a very limited amount of time. I prefer to concentrate on hours or a few days and not more than this. And then I try to have the same amount of pages for each other day, just to make sure that the rhythm is right. And then I try to be very realistic, and I try to respect what I see as, I don't know, the complexity and this ambiguity of life. It's never just one meaning, is never simple. So I'm trying to have this balance as much as I can, and to advance little by little with the small details of every moment.
You tell the story very much from the perspective of Romeo. Do you consider telling stories from other points of view before, like when you look at the film, one could imagine a very different type of film if it would be written from the perspective of Eliza, or because it's very explicitly told also from one perspective.
This is one of the decisions that I am taking from the screenplay. I take a few decisions. So first of all, I know that I'm going to shoot plan séquence. I'm going to shoot just long takes, one shot per scene, and this influences a lot the way I'm writing. Then I know that the perspective on the film will be individual and subjective, just somebody's perspective, who is watching all the scenes or witnessing all the scenes. For this film, to be honest, I made the decision of just having his perspective when I discovered the story and when I put together all these things that I read in the press. So I never really considered Eliza, because for me this is primarily not so much a film about, I don't know, corruption as people watch it. It's primarily a film about aging. It's about people of this age that we're having now. It's about that moment in life when you're reaching this peak of your life and you're looking back and forwards, and maybe if you look back you're not so satisfied of what you see behind you, but there's nothing much you can change. This is it, and you're still having some time in front of you to live, and you need to make some decisions and to see how you're going to live with yourself for the rest of your days. And this is the moment when people turn towards children, trying to hope that, sometimes getting smarter and experience could help the others, which, as you know, it's not really very true. People need to make their own mistakes, but this is what you need to believe at this age to give some sense to your life. So I don't know what your question was, but I wanted to say this.
No. I think that's it. But in one of the central scenes, like the scene of which we can see the still also on the poster of the film, the scene in which he explains that he explained to her about truth and being sincere and all of this. But there is maybe some kind of emergency exit, or maybe some variations to the concept of what is truthful and right, and she might have to use this. In this period, in this talk, he also refers to this period of 91. and then explicitly says, you know, we decided to come back, we made a mistake, and can you tell something about that generation, that moment, 91, and you know the hopes that that gave, and then the possible, you know, disappointment of the present?
So, first of all, we started as all Eastern Europeans with very, very great hopes, to be honest. Like probably too big hopes for such an abrupt change, to be honest. So we hoped that not only that we're going to live better and we're going to be free, but that, I don't know, correctness is going to happen in this world the next day and people would be better. And of course, nothing like this happened. But 91 means something very specific for us in the sense that we didn't need too much time after the fall of communism to understand that things are not going to change dramatically, at least here where we live. And we had this moment when people who were in power were trying to, I don't know, put some order into that society, and we had this great civic manifestation which was brutally repressed by bringing these miners that came to Bucharest and they smashed everybody. And that was more or less the end of the hopes that things will change for a while, because it was very, very violent and completely unexpected, and people thought that, you know, freedom means that you have the right to protest. And that was the moment when a lot of people of my generation, if they didn't live right after the fall of communism, decided to leave. And this is why I refer to that moment, because there were some people who decided to move back to Romania right after the fall of communism. They had escaped before, which came back with great hopes and decided to stay and to change whatever they could, and which are very disappointed now and think that after that moment they should have left, you know. And actually this film speaks about their disappointment today. It speaks about this feeling that I'm seeing next to me in the society today. But I want to say something. As much as this film is about Romania, it's not just about Romania. And it's not just about the corruption that exists in this country. And I've been with the film to a lot of places, and I have this feeling that sometimes it speaks about human nature, I hope. And it can be understood in a lot of places because it speaks about a lot of things. It's not just, you know, very simple, basic, local, geographically set things.
Yeah, actually, just before the screening, the ambassador of Romania, who is here, spoke about how actually he amazed it is that it is very specific on the one hand, like already in 432, all the stories that are told are really referring to a reality which was very, very well known, and he thought that it did not necessarily translate all that well, but so far all of your films have communicated extremely well on a universal level, I would say.
But I think that this is possible in cinema. I think this is something that we should be doing in cinema. If you focus on something very precise and something that you know very well, it's possible to speak about something way greater. And it's a little bit, if you want, like in philosophy, you can start from, I don't know, talking about a stone and you end up speaking about the world. And sometimes it's possible to do this in film. As long as you're not trying to make, like, I don't know, social criticism, which I don't really believe in through cinema. If you're trying to focus on people, on situations, on human nature, on life, on reality, and on cinema, what is cinema after all? It's a way of, I don't know, understanding the life which is next to us, as long as we try to have reality of the moment, of the model of cinema and not other films or fiction, then it's a way of understanding better. And then it's possible to speak about something specific and people will just see themselves in the film, as sometimes it happens with my films, I hope.
I don't want to speak on behalf of the Romanian ambassador, so if he wants to correct me on what I just said, please do. Any questions? Yeah. Please wait for the microphone so Christian can hear us.
I just wanted to ask director and scriptwriter, who was throwing stones and why?
Okay, yes, thank you. That's a good question. I got it. I will tell you a little story about this. Um, I was mixing this film in Paris in February, and when I finished mixing the film, I screened it to my distributor, and he liked it a lot. He knew the screenplay, he liked the film, but after we drank a bottle of wine and talking about the film, he finally told me that it's something that he didn't like very much in the film. That it's not very clear who throws this stone. And he told me that we still believe that we are, I don't know, in the 60s, we are the Nouvelle Vague, and we live today. People need to know, to have all the answers by the end of the film, and so on. And I think that 2 weeks later, we submitted the film to Cannes. The film was selected. And I got back this feedback from my sales agent that they really like the film a lot. It's going to be in competition. They were displeased about just one thing, that it's too clear who throws the stone. So in between these two things, I think that if you'll have the patience to watch the film again, you will have the answer in the film, because for me, it's quite clear.
Any other question from the audience? Yeah.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Hi. It seemed that the theme of the film was addressing concepts of education and agency, in that there's kind of this overarching idea that education will sort of bring about some kind of control and enlightenment. And yet the film is not only populated with moments of chance and fate, but Romeo's own kind of preoccupation with controlling his environment is quite palpable. Is that something that you sort of considered, and how?
Well, the film is saying several things at the same time. It speaks about how important education is about the younger generation, and that education is the only hope. But at the same time, the film is investigating this. How can we expect that this new generation will save us if we keep, I don't know, educating them in the same way we were educated? Why do we expect that they will be different? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. So when I was writing the film, I was investigating a lot of cases like this, which happened here. And very often, there is this huge gap between this discourse that parents are having for children, which is very moral and very precise as long as it's with words. And then they have the model of what parents do. And sometimes, education is made much more with what children watch and what they see and what they understand than what you tell them. And I really doubt that unless somebody makes, I don't know, a step outside of this circle, things are going to change dramatically. Because without really understanding, we perpetuate this model for the children, and then it's very difficult to hope that they will be different than us.
Any other question?
First of all, big congratulations for the film.
Thank you.
I think it's really, so complex thematically, but also so clear in delivering all this, what you are talking about. But my question is very concrete, and it goes to which extent do you define the dialogue in your script? And how much, what is that you work with actors then also before shooting?
Okay, so thank you for the question. The dialogue is very precise, which is to say that I make a lot of changes, but most of the changes I make them before I shoot. So I rehearse with the actors immediately after I ask them to come to casting. So I talk to them, I try to know them. I'm trying not to cast actors, but to understand what is their personality, to see if there's any connection in terms of, I don't know, temperament between them and the character. And then we start reading. And I act a lot for my actors, and I play my own dialogue. I act it, and I read with them. And we are correcting all the time until it's very smooth, and it's very oral, and it's very easy to say it. And then it's a moment when they have their own feedback in this dialogue, and I incorporate all this into the dialogue that we will use for the shooting. But when we shoot, we need to have this very precise, because I'm shooting a lot of takes. It's very difficult to shoot in just one shot per scene. If even for scenes of 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, it's just one shot. So it's a choreography which is very, very precise, and there's no way of doing anything later on in terms of editing. It's either good on the set or it's not good. So I'm doing, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 takes, and it's very difficult for the actors. But if I have the same dialogue every time, this allows me to do some editing in the sound later on. And it allows the actors to get free at the end of these 40 takes. Because together with they become very tired at the end, but there's a freedom associated with this routine. And they start focusing a lot on what they feel and not on what they say. So my feeling is that the last 10 takes are always the best. And I also ask them to be very flexible, because if in the middle of the shooting I feel that something is not wrong and they can't do it in what I told them to say, we will just find something. We will change. It's a great benefit of being your own, not just writer, but I'm also my own producer. So I have all the freedom in the world to change whatever I want.
Very good. Can you maybe, before we go to the next question, regarding the actors, how do you pick them? Because like Christina and Cosmina were actually at the beginning of their career. Casting, I mean, they seemed perfectly cast. They worked very well they're not an evident combination, but they worked very, very, very well. And actually, Cosmina was very happy that you shot sequences, because she said with a little bit of the theater experience that she had, it helped her then a more classical approach of cutting up scenes and decoupage and etc. So she was very happy with this approach. And they both said also that actually you give them, despite the fact that you know exactly what you want, that you give them also a freedom of expression, and were like that they felt very free in building their roles.
I don't talk a lot with the actors about their roles. I told them as much as they need to know. If they need to have more details, I will talk to them. If they don't, I'm not really interested in what kind of internal process they need to have. All I'm interested in if it sounds right or not. This is what I'm talking to them. I give them the insight of the character. If they need more details, we will talk. But then I know what I need. If they can reach that level without a lot of interference from me, I'm very happy. If not, I will show them how to do this. So it's a freedom which I give the actors. But at the same time, having the right actors is a lot about casting. So you need to find the right people. The right people means that I understand from reading with the actors which are the best from these people about what I need to do. I have this feeling that some people are more, I don't know, suitable for a certain role, for a certain film, and I'm looking a lot during the casting. I work with this friend who is working as a casting agent. For me, he's actually a director, and he knows all the actors from all the small theaters. He shows me at the beginning a lot of pictures, and I started trusting myself in watching mugs, people's faces. I feel something about them. So I will make a folder of very probable people and another one about, less probable people, and we will start watching them. And there's something about the logic of dialogue. Each dialogue has its internal logic. If I'm reading with an actor and he detects this logic without me telling him a lot, there are good chances that we can work together. If I have to explain to him everything, it's not really going to work. And then it's about the fluency. Whenever the actors are coming to talk to me, I will tell them a few lines from what they have to say without knowing that this is a written text. If I can do this for them, they need to do this for me. So it's a matter of trust, and it's a matter of working with, very, very tiny ways of expressing yourself. As you see in these films, I'm encouraging people to speak in a very low voice. I discovered that, they are much more expressive when they speak like this. There are a lot of shades of meaning. But then at the end, of course, it's very complicated because even if Cosmina mentioned that it's easier for her to work in plan séquence, for me it's very difficult. Everything needs to be precise, and if something goes wrong with the actors, with the camera, with the light, with the sound, in the 5th minute, you just say cut and you start all over again.
Yeah, and maybe one more thing then relating script writing and working with the actors. When you build your characters on paper, how much do you have the feeling that you have completely figured them out? Do you know only the parts that you need that are essential for your story, or do you really build a complete character in all its dimensions when you conceive the film?
Well, actually, I don't think it's good to have all the answers. I don't think it's good to be so precise. Mm-hmm. I'm feeling that I'm already too precise, to be honest, because I'm always in this need of control. And I'm trying to allow some ambiguity into the scenes, into the films, into the character, into the way time passes. If you watch these films, I'm always having some moments which are not narrative, which are there simply because time sometimes in reality passes without bringing something narrative. So I'm trying to have this balance, and also about the characters. To be honest, when I'm building the screenplay, I'm thinking much more about the progress of the narrative and of the situations than I think about the character. Mm-hmm. I'm not really using a lot of scenes simply to depict what the character is about. I'm trying to add this as an extra layer after I have a scene which I need for the progress of the narrative. Mm-hmm. Then in that scene, if I can add something about the character, very good. If not, he's just going to be depicted at the end by what he did. But for example, it's one thing in this film, for example, I didn't know when I was writing the screenplay that I'm going to use this music which he listens to the radio to associate this with him. I knew that he's a guy who needs to be in control. He's doing these neurotic things with the apple, and he's doing always the same thing. I knew that I wanted to listen to the same music, but I didn't have the music. The music came later on in the editing. This is something that I thought it goes with him. But I'm always very focused about the narrative, about the story. Mm-hmm. I never start from the character.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other? Yeah.
How much time you take for the pre-production? It's a limited time, or it's something that if you feel that you're not still ready with the actors, we need more time, and then it's ready? And second question, since you looks that you're very precise in preparation, shooting, what is your process then of editing? It's very precise, or try to experiment, cut scenes, try, make it very shorter, very longer? So these two processes, before and after the shooting.
Thank you. First of all, I need to go very fast with the shooting after I finish writing. I don't know why, but I have an energy, and then I'm always speeding up a lot. So for example, for this film, I don't know, I think I was still writing in February, and I shot in May, I think, May or June. So I wrote the first draft by the end of the year. It was December something, 2005, I think. I called my co-producers in France and let them know, based on that screenplay, that I want to shoot next year. So somehow I got the financing that I need. I got the money that I needed in Romania. And then, even if I wasn't ready with the screenplay, I entered the shooting. Because once you start the preparation, you can't really change a lot of things. So the preparation lasted like from, I don't know, March to May, less than 3 months, and including the scouting, because I was not having the locations and what we built. I started doing something. I started building some like locations in the middle of the main location, in the middle of the town that I find. I'm building, their apartment is built in a ruined building over there just to have the relationship. So I'm not preparing a lot. And I fixed the shooting from the beginning, like weeks before, and I respect this. I'm postponing sometimes the shooting with a few days, but actually I like to work under pressure, and I'm not preparing things too much. And this is what I did for Beyond the Hills as well. I think I was still shooting in September, and in December I was still writing in September, and in December I was shooting already. And this comes to the second question about editing. Since I'm going so fast, I started in Beyond the Hills to bring the editor on the set. So he brought his group and he started editing that film, for example, at the same time with me shooting. I was shooting during the day and editing during the evenings and the nights. And he was working and showing me things. For this other film, I brought him in the last 3 or 4 weeks just to see how the film goes. And when we finished the shooting, we were having a first edit of the film as well. So we could watch it in the small town where we shot. We could watch the film on the screen in the local cinema. It wasn't precisely what you see now, but it gave me a feeling of how the film is going to evolve. But then, to be honest, even if I shoot in plan séquence, I'm spending a lot of time in editing just to make sure that the rhythm is right. But you have to imagine what editing with long takes means. You can take out scenes, you can change the place of one scene, but mostly what you do, you are rewatching a lot of time the takes just to make sure that you're having the right one. And then you can cut a little bit from the beginning and from the ending, but there isn't much else that you can do because it's just one shot. But still I spent, 3-4 months in editing the image, and then 3-4 months also in editing the sound, which is really very important for me since I don't use music.
Any other questions? Maybe two more regarding the locations. I actually watched a couple of days ago the film for the second time, and there were two things that I somehow, I don't know how come, but that really struck me. One is that the film was extremely fast. It looked like an action movie all of a sudden. The first time I saw it, I didn't see it as an action movie, but in the second viewing, it was as if it gained momentum. It was just going really fast. And the second thing was that you mentioned the locations, what are the central locations, but the prominence of the car struck me as something very powerful this time. That the car rides, everything, the connection between the spaces. Did I project something, or could you comment on these two aspects from your angle, or from pace, rhythm, and the car?
First of all, there's something about this feeling of a thriller that I'm always trying to have a little bit, and that I'm having in this one. This is because I'm trying always in the film not only to show what happens, but to make you the witness of what the main character feels, how he experiences what he comes through. And that's a bit more complicated in film, as you know, because it's not a book. You can't say what he thinks about. You have to present situations. So I'm trying to pick up this level of situations which are still realistic, but at the same time speak a lot about how he feels. And this is why I'm creating always this level of thriller about him, because he feels stressed and watched and guilty. This is the portrait of somebody feeling guilty because he has enough conscience to know that he was wrong and that he did a lot of mistakes in his life. So how will you portray this into a film? How will you portray this kind of angoisse that he's feeling into a film? It's not easy. You need to find a lot of incidents. But it's a specific plan in the screenplay. It won't come like this on the shooting. About the car, there's not a very specific policy behind. It's I don't know, it's something functional, to be honest. It's part of the situations, it's part of their life, it's part of... The only thing I can say is that I discovered on the shooting that it glues the scenes together and it gives something to the rhythm. And then I trust this a lot, and then I try to do this in a way which is not very repetitive, but which I find to be quite cinematic, in the sense that I try to avoid all the time to show them through the windshield in that classical Hollywood shot, which is, very, very classical, but not very natural. Actually, you never sit on the hood to watch the people inside. You sit behind normally, so, it's this kind of realistic thoughts that we're having. But most of what I do, what we do, comes from this original decision of making films which are very, very close to reality as much as possible. all this idea with the plan séquence, long scenes come from here, and the lack of music, the lack of editing. It's an attempt of doing a kind of cinema which is closer to life and reality, in the hope that people will see this as something more possible, something that could happen to them as well, and closer to reality and not just this kind of conventional fiction.
As I told you this afternoon, last time, or as Nina told you, last time we saw you on Skype was about a year and a half ago when you intervened at the Europa Cinemas conference, which was then in Prague, and where you depicted a rather depressing image of cinema, I mean, the movie theaters in Romania, and that it's actually pretty hard to bring your films and everybody's films to the public. And if I'm correct, you even organized caravans. You have also your own film festival. So how important, I mean, on the one hand, for whom do you make these films if you can't get them to the people? And how important is this process of bringing them really literally to the people? What is the importance of the cinema, the movie theater to you? Because there are, of course, a lot of channels through which films can be shown these days. Is there still this special thing about the movie theater and, how do you look at this?
Watch this night, for example. We couldn't have this conversation if you were watching the film on a computer, You had to get outside of your homes to be there so we can talk. Cinema is not only about watching the film, it's about talking, it's about exchanging this energy and the feelings and what we think about. Actually, I'm not sure I'm having a better opinion about my films that you have, but I just have this pleasure of talking with you because I'm interested in this matters. But the situation with the cinemas here is not very good. But I'm not only making films for the local audience. So actually, by the end of this 6 months or 8 months of exploitation, I'm going to have much more audience in a lot of countries where I screen the film than I have in Romania. So the film is for its spectators. It's not just the Romanians. But at the same time, of course, it's a film spoken in Romanian, and this is why I'm making this effort all the time to bring it to people. And especially for this film, I was having this very good feedback from the audience, in the sense that whenever we were organizing these single screens in the small towns, people were crowding to watch it. It was an event, they were coming, they wanted to talk to me, they wanted to watch the film, and the film is quite simple. There is a level for everybody, and people could watch it. Even if they watch it as a thriller, I don't mind. For me, it's still important that people can still find this way to the theater. Because at the theater, you will be talking to somebody else sitting next to you. You will talk to the director. You will see something on a big screen. It's very, very different. And as much as, we are in this digital era and things are going to change, I think that this needs to stay as a way of promoting the film, as a way of making an exchange about the film, because if not, you're not even going to know that this film exists, and you're not going to be curious to watch it.
Thank you very much. Any other question? I still have a long list of questions, but I'm just thinking maybe since it's very late for you, you're 1 hour later and you got up very early to get to us. Maybe I need to leave the next questions for your visit. I don't know. Any other questions? Oh yes, there's a question.
Bună seara, domnule Mungiu, și felicitări pentru filmul acesta minunat. Thank you very much for this wonderful movie. I have seen it in autumn in Ljubljana, in Life, and today with the same pleasure. My question is not related to the author of the broken glass, who is throwing the stone. I have a hint, or I think the film gives us a hint, but rather how to interpret the last line. I think the last line from the movie. The fact that the girl managed, m-am descurcat, nu-i așa, tată? So I managed, father. So could you help me in understanding a bit? Or
well, I think that since you're asking, I think that you understood already. Actually, that was the most difficult thing for me, and this is why I was rewriting during the shooting, because I was not having the right ending, and I was trying to have an ending in which to understand if the film is going to be optimistical or pessimistical, and what's the feeling about this new generation. And I came up with this ending. which is interpreted by people in very, very different ways. Some people watch it as very optimistic, I think mostly because of the music. Some people watch it as completely hopeless. And for me, what's important is to think about, I don't know, what was the decision of this girl, and to think about if what she did, well, okay, she didn't do what her father asked her to do, which is already a good thing, but she did something else. Well, she tried to help her out of the situation. Is this something more, I don't know, valuable from a moral point of view? I'm not sure. So actually, if you think that all his education was made so that she wouldn't need to do what they had to do, and at the end she learned her way in life, I don't know. I can't interpret this into just one line. You know, on one hand, she will be a survivor. On the other hand, this is not the way they meant to educate her.
Thank you very much. I have to admit that the question was rhetorical.
Yes, well.
Any last question? Yes.
Thank you. I don't want this to be the last question, but first of all, thank you for all your films. I just have a little observation about the mobile phone in the film. It's really interesting because I always find mobile phones in films kind of stupid, but you managed to transform it from a mobile phone to a plot device to a thing that the girl associates her father's infidelity with. So, I mean, it's like a really small thing, but it's brilliant, as many of the things in your films. But what I want to ask you is, what's your favorite sequence that you ever made? You know, I mean, from all of your films. If
That's
you
a good
have
one.
it. Or what is the most complicated one?
I think the most complicated one, and one that I like a lot, is that dinner scene table from 4 months, 2 weeks, and 2 days. It's that moment when they just talk and the girl is there and she doesn't want to be there. It's just this frontal shot in the second part of the film when, and I have to admit I didn't know how to shoot that, and I shot, I don't know, a whole day without knowing how to do this. And it was a moment when I decided to keep the actors for one more day, and then I decided to change the lens, and I decided to just focus on what was important. And that was one of the best lessons that I learned for myself from my own shooting. Focus on what's important and just figure out what's important for you in that scene. And for me, it was important to watch the girl and to understand that she's not there. And that scene works quite well for a 10-minute scene, in the sense that for a period you are just with her and they are talking, but you're not seeing them, you're not watching them, you're not listening to them, you're just focusing on the girl. And after that, she's doing something, but you're just watching the others. So it works a lot for me, that scene, and it works a lot because it's simple and it's complex, and you are inside somebody's mind, which is very difficult in cinema. But I think that, you know, I pretty much like a few scenes that I do in every film, as much as I dislike a lot of scenes that I do, but we all need to do better with each other film.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other question? Yeah, so we have already a date. You will come with your next film. What is going to be your next film?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
And when will it be?
I never know. I need a while to settle down. I have for this time, I wrote a screenplay before this one. But I was saying, as I was saying, if I'm not doing this, what I'm writing right away, if I let it stay for a while, I might give it to somebody else. So I don't know. I will have to figure out what's important for me in that moment, and you will know.
Okay. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
We have a deal.
Thank you. I will be present next time. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.